This video is brought to you by me. For $1 a month, you can support the channel directly and help me keep doing what I love. Thanks for watching and supporting. Playing Viewtiful Joe 2 is bittersweet. It's everything I wanted from a sequel to one of my favorite surprises I covered for my channel last year. Our lovable cinephile Joe is back at it again to save the world with his iconic meta powers, but this time he's not alone. He's got help from his girlfriend Sylvia, who adds a whole new angle to gameplay. But what makes Viewtiful Joe 2 a bit of a bummer in 2021 is knowing that this is where, outside of a couple of cameos and spin-offs, the saga ends prematurely.
Who? Me?
No, us.
Viewtiful Joe 2!
Viewtiful Joe 2 picks up immediately where the first game left off, and once again, the world of Movie Land is in peril. The Black Emperor, the leader of the alien species known as the Gedo, is trying to assemble the Rainbow Oscars, or the Oscars of Unlimited Power as I like to call them, that allows Movie Land to control the power of happy endings in film. The Emperor wants to leverage that power by collecting all the Oscars and conquer Movie Land for himself, which funnily enough is how I see celebrities viewing winning these awards. Like, the promise of immortality for winning an Oscar seems very in line with what the Emperor wants to do. One Oscar isn't cool. You know what's cool? A billion Oscars. The Emperor casts Joe and Sylvia to the outskirts of Movie Land, where they have to fight their way back and get the Oscars first. Similarly to the first game, it's a side-scrolling adventure where Joe uses his melee attacks to kill evil robots while using his VFX abilities to manipulate the speed at which the film he is in moves, making time slow down or speed up. These lead to some awesome final hits where the robots just explode into 20 individual pieces. This time though, Sylvia, Joe's girlfriend he spent most of the first game saving, is his companion with powers and abilities of her own. At any moment you can switch between the two to tackle obstacles and enemies depending on what the situation at hand needs. Sylvia as a fighter adds so much needed range to your armory as she's packing two pistols named the Desperados that shoot lethal hearts at enemies. She also has VFX moves of her own, allowing her to slow down time like Joe, as well as the ability to manipulate instant replay that lets you repeat attacks 3 times back to back to back in order to hit switches and damage enemies. While I found myself using Joe far more consistently for melee attacks and close quarter fighting, Sylvia came in handy a lot of the time for solving puzzles or socially distancing from enemies when my health was low. Viewtiful Joe 2 feels more streamlined on the gameplay front than the first game, not to say that the first game is exceptionally bad or anything, but the balance between the need for the speed and the slow-mo feels more even. In the first game I felt like I was constantly using slow motion and ignoring the fast-forward functionality outside of a couple of odd edge cases. But this game really nails the fun feedback loop, and it helps me to overlook some of the shortcomings that I feel it has. In the first game, every movie you played in had its own unique gameplay gimmick or hook that separated it from the other movies. For instance, my favorite version of that was playing in a submarine that you had to fight through forward, then it flips over and you have to fight your way back through the same areas, but now, because the sub is flipped over, you can get to areas you couldn't get to before. So you experience the same level 3 different times in 3 very different ways. But Viewtiful Joe 2 has almost none of that. It's really the only thing I felt a little let down by, because most of the movies involve 3 acts of moving left to right, with the odd puzzle here and there to change it up a bit. It was less about levels being set pieces themselves, and smaller areas being short-lived set pieces you move past quickly. The best example of this is probably the scene where you manipulate levers to move sections of a room clockwise or counterclockwise in order to move artifacts into a specific spot and unlock the next area. I think that was a pretty fun example of what could have been built upon further. But the game manages to make up for the less creative level designs and its meta as heck story and recurring enemies. Throughout the game you fight this dinosaur named Big Joe, who at a certain point really seems like he needed a win against Joe and Sylvia for his own self-confidence, and he never gets it. Poor guy. But he initially starts as a guardian of one of the Oscars, and after you beat him and attain the Oscar, he gets a chip on his shoulder and chases Joe and Sylvia into other movies while getting more and more competent every time they meet. Joe and Sylvia have an ally on the outside of Movie Land, Joe's dad, Jet. He helps them by changing the films on the projector so that they can go to new movies and find more Oscars. And with all of these movies comes one of the strongest points of these games in my opinion, the boss fights. You fight a narcoleptic statue named Flinty Stone, the brother of Fire Leo from the first game / the bane of my existence, Frost Tiger, who is now the new bane of my existence, But what I really found most enjoyable about these encounters was the banter between Joe, Sylvia, and the bosses, where Joe would say something wrong, Sylvia would take it personally, and they'd begin bickering in front of this monster that literally wants to make them dead.
Elite? You gotta be kidding me. Try dating Sylvia here. She'll have you whimpering in seconds flat.
Joe, what's that supposed to mean?
Enemy has produced weaponry 10 meters ahead. Request immediate backup. Repeat, immediate backup. Over.
I copy.
Why you? How dare you exercise force? Well, it's time to put an end to all this. The attack forces of Ghetto's 5th Panzer Division, 1st Reconnaissance Regiment, 2nd Platoon will blow you to
Come on,
smithereens.
Sylvia. I didn't mean anything by it.
Yes, you did. Now, if you ever say anything like that again, I'll...
Now that's the kind of confidence I am sorely lacking. But much like the first game, the story is complete with twists and turns and tongue-in-cheek references to classic films, like teaching a robot how to love like in Bicentennial Man. I'm sure that Robin Williams movie was the source of that plotline. You've also got Indiana Jones references, Blade Runner references, and plenty more that the game just goofs on the whole time, making it very fun to pay attention to during the cutscenes and narrations. But where it went from a fun time to crushing was the ending. Viewtiful Joe 2 was clearly supposed to be a centerpiece for the Viewtiful Joe trilogy and actively hints at what we could have expected in a third game, by literally pointing at a castle and saying, "This is where we finish this." But where Joe finishes his story in a triumphant place, ready to take on a new challenge and settle the score once and for all, back in the real world, a rougher chain of events led to our hero being left in limbo. Clover Studio, the experimental development team that was forged from Capcom R&D talent who wanted to make games based on new IPs and not sequels, was being micromanaged and pressured by Capcom to make more profitable games, forgoing the creativity in the studio's DNA in return for more money. And in spite of Viewtiful Joe 2 and Clover's next couple of releases, Okami and God Hand, being critically well received, the sales side did not live up to Capcom's expectations and led the company to being hesitant and greenlighting fewer projects. This led Capcom to try to reabsorb Clover and caused a lot of the talent responsible for the classic games to jump ship, leaving Viewtiful Joe without his creators and in the hands of a company that didn't find him profitable enough to keep making games about. And that means Joe never got a satisfying ending to his saga, leaving many fans like myself incredibly disappointed. While there have been some more rumblings from Hideki Kamiya about interest in returning to the series, he said there isn't much he can do besides keep telling fans to keep expressing interest in the series. One day soon, I hope this video is deemed irrelevant by the announcement of a new main entry, but more than anything, I hope it's not another 17 years before we see Joe suit up again to star in another major game. Of course, even though Clover dissolved, the creativity of the studio lives on in Platinum Games. After talent from Clover left to form a new studio called Seeds, merged with another studio called Odd Inc., and became the studio we know today. That focus on fun is still very evident, and we can even see a lot of inspiration from Viewtiful Joe in the way the Wonderful 101 looks, and in the fun, satisfying combat of Bayonetta. So while we may not get a direct sequel anytime soon, we can still enjoy the games that came, and the games that have yet to come after the original 2 games. And even if we never get another one, we can at least say that the first 2 games were excellent, fun examples that show how far a little bit of style and emphasis on fun gameplay can go. Thank you so much for watching my video, I really appreciate it. If you liked the video, consider leaving a like on it. Have you played Viewtiful Joe or Viewtiful Joe 2? Let me know in the comments down below. Consider subscribing if you never want to miss a video, and lastly, if you want to support the channel directly, consider going to my Patreon in the link below the video. For $1 a month, you can get early access to all my videos and access to videos you can't get anywhere else. I'd like to take a moment to thank my higher tier patrons, Okayla, Just Jessica, 8-Bit Jesus, Andrew Elmore, and Andrew Lang. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.